I'm really hoping that you can hear me clearly. I am using a microphone, but I noticed it was a little staticky, so I'm just praying everything comes out good. We're going to be talking today about organizing study materials, and I'm going to be going through the PowerPoint presentation for you, just like I would if we were in class. But I thought it might be helpful just to do it this way and show you because me just talking about it isn't quite enough for this particular lecture. So you may want to go over the PowerPoint again later yourself. So underneath this video in Canvas, you'll find this where it says click on the photo below to access the Organizing Study Materials PowerPoint presentation. And you just need to double click on this photo and it will open the presentation. Now, while I'm waiting for that to open, I just want you to know that this is about how to organize your notes for studying for the test. And you should be continuously studying your notes throughout the term, not just right before the test. If you cram right before the test, like the night before, you will not remember all the information for the test. And even if you do manage to remember it for the test, it won't stick with you, meaning it'll just go into your short-term memory because you only studied it for one day. And if you only study something one time, your brain doesn't think it's that important. And so it doesn't put it into long-term memory or you'll have access to it later. So that means that all the studying you did the night before was for no reason other than to take the test because you won't remember any of that information in a couple of days after the test is over. And a lot of us have done that, right? Where we've studied for 6 or 7 hours the night before the test. Maybe we've even stayed up half the night trying to get all that stuff into our brain. Some of us might do well in those situations and score well on the test. But then the day after the test, how much do you remember? For myself, I know the answer is very little. I do tend to remember some things, but I notice that a lot of times the things I remember are the things I've reviewed over the course of the term multiple times. So the key is to study your notes regularly, meaning when you get home from taking notes, you put them in your folder with your other notes and you take a second then to just go over all the notes you've taken for the entire class, starting from the first day that you take notes. So if you go the first day, take notes, put it in your folder, study those notes. The next time you go to class, you take those notes, put them in the folder, and then you study the first notes and the second notes. Then the next time you take notes, you put them in there and you study the first, second, and third notes. But the thing is by the time you get to the midterm, you already know the beginning of your notes quite well because you've seen it so many times by that point. So the key is you add a little bit every single time and you learn a little bit more every single time you study. And that will save you not only from having to cram at the end of the term, but it will also save you from not knowing the information after the test is over. Cool, right? So what do you do with these notes when you're like looking to actually study for the test? So the test is coming, maybe it's a midterm, maybe it's a final. No matter what, you take all of your stuff, all your notes, whether it's lecture notes from the class itself, whether it's muscle reading notes. So let's say you read some chapters and you also took muscle reading notes on those. You will also include those in organizing your study materials because those are study materials. If you have any like labs for the class and you took notes for those, then you'll include that stuff. Any handouts your teacher has given you, you want to use those. If you've made flashcards, you can put those in this mix, okay? So basically, you want to start with a growth mindset. So I'm on the first slide here before you organize your notes. You want to have a growth mindset like I'm going to organize these notes and I'm going to learn more by going through the information repeatedly. Not just the day before the test, but always, like starting with my notes from the beginning of the term to the time that we have the test. And you want to start organizing for your test about 2 weeks in advance. And I would say a week in advance at the minimum, because organizing does take a little bit of time, but the process of organizing also helps you learn the material because as you're going through, as you'll see, you're going to be figuring out or deciding which things are most important and which things are not. And part of that is knowing the material enough to understand what is the most important stuff. And that means, yeah, you got to know something about what you're studying before you actually get to the point where you're organizing. So this system relies on the fact that you have actually been reviewing your notes throughout the term. All right, you want to create an ideal study space for yourself. Whatever that is for you, because as we've talked about before in other lectures, not everybody has the same study space that makes sense for them. So for me, my best space is actually somewhere where there's a little bit of background noise, so maybe a coffee shop or something like that. But if that's not available, then I don't mind just studying with maybe like some TV on in the background or something, as long as it's a show or something that I wouldn't normally watch. Since I don't watch TV at all, it's pretty easy to find something I don't normally watch. And I mean, I usually put on sports in the background and they just kind of work. But that only works because I don't really like sports that much. I don't really care about watching them, but it's nice to have that background noise. You might want some certain type of background noise, or you might not. You might need a place where no one's going to bother you. You want to be arranged to be undisturbed while you are going through this, unless you're working with someone else, obviously, because you can do this organization process together with other students in the class, and they can help you figure out or decide what's most important or what isn't. If you kind of suck at that and you're still learning how to do that, it might be nice to have someone that is good at that. You want to create a distributed study schedule over this 2-week period or this 1-week period. You don't want to just do it all at the end of the week, the last minute, the night before. You want to do a little bit every single day. Why? Well, because your brain works on repetition. So the more your brain sees something, the more likely it is to think it's important. That's why advertising works, because we see the same commercial over and over again. That's why companies pay big money to have the same commercial play over and over again on your YouTube videos. You might have noticed that. And that's because the more you see the commercial, the more likely your brain is to think, oh, this is important. So same thing goes for studying. The more you see something over time, so if you see it every single day, a couple times a day, you're going to remember that a lot more than something you've only seen once before the test, even if you looked at it for 6 hours. Okay. I just went backwards again. You want to gather all your course materials for the class. This would be like all your notes, all the presentation, like PowerPoints, all the books, everything. And then you're ready. So first you want to go through all your materials and you want to condense it. So you want to place a star next to the important material. So you'll go through all your notes and figure out what are the most important things that you know are going to be on the test. If you know it's important and you know for sure it's going to be on the test, place a star next to it, okay? Then go through and reread what you've starred and add another star only to the most important material. Then go back again and place a third star next to the most important material. And then reread again and circle only the most important concepts. So what you'll see here is you should have a bunch of stuff that has a various number of stars next to it. So some stuff might have 1 star, some stuff might have 2 stars, some stuff might have 3 stars, and some will have 3 stars and be circled. The ones that have 3 stars and are circled should be the ones that you start making flashcards for and stuff first. That way, if you run out of time, at least you've covered the most important material. See how that works? Because you might run out of time. Who knows? Things might happen in your life. You might not be able to finish studying completely the way you would like. So it's good to get the studying started with the most important stuff. Then you'll go and do the ones that are just 3 stars, then the 2 stars, and then finally the 1 star stuff. And you can condense this stuff. Oh, this is just going to go over what you should have. So you should have key concepts are circled and have 3 stars. Level 1 has just 3 stars. Level 2 has 2 stars, and level 3 and 4 has 1 star. So you can break it down to these are the most key important concepts, the key concepts. Then you got the main ideas, the secondary ideas, and the supporting details like a minor detail. Okay, so you're basically ranking items that are going to be on the test by how important they are or how likely it is that you're going to be tested on that material. So items that you think for sure are going to be on the test will be circled ones. And these might be on the test. Pretty good idea that they will be. These probably will. These may or may not, okay? Then we organize the study materials. So we take that information and we create an outline. So an outline would be probably the easiest way because you've already kind of organized it that way from most important to least important. So creating an outline out of that stuff wouldn't be too hard. And honestly, that is my favorite way to study for a test, is to create outlines based on importance and study the outline. And to me, that works best. I am a visual verbal learner though, so if you're a visual nonverbal learner, that might not work for you. It might actually be better for you to create a video that you make yourself that you later watch over and over again, where you're listening to yourself explain all the concepts. That might work better for you than doing an outline. Okay, so be creative. You can actually create any type of study cheat sheet thing that you want. Okay, any study sheet will be fine. These are just ideas. So if you come up with something better, hey, do it. Whatever works best for you is what you should be doing, right? So you can create test questions. And I used to actually have my students do this as an assignment, but we already have enough work in here. But one of the best things you can do is actually go through and create test questions based off of the information so you would start with those key concepts that are circled and create questions about those first. By going into the book and looking up like sort of questions with a set of answers, like if you created like some multiple choice questions, some true false questions, some short answer questions, or maybe even essay questions. By creating those types of questions for different sections of your book, you are actually forcing yourself to ask the question, what are some test questions that might come out of this chapter? That's what your teacher has to do when or I guess it could be a male teacher too, when he or she is creating the test. They're doing exactly what you're doing. They're trying to create test questions by looking through the chapter to see, okay, what information is the most important that I should be testing these students on? So if you're reviewing the same information and trying to come up with test questions, you're probably going to come up with some of the questions that are actually going to be on the test. Then we have flashcards. Flashcards, I never liked them. I always felt like it took me too long to create them, and I don't like carrying around like a big brick of flashcards. That's why I prefer outline, because I could just put it on paper, and it's much easier for me to get out some paper and just study that than carry around a big brick of flashcards. But some people, in fact, most people love flashcards. And so I'm not going to say that, like, because I don't like them, you shouldn't do them. If they work for you, absolutely do them. But when you're creating them, don't create them just by section. Create them the way we talked about, by a hierarchy of the most important stuff to the least important stuff. Again, that way if you run out of time making your flashcards, at least you've made them for the really important concepts, right? Then we've got concept maps, and we've talked about this before, and we're going to go into this just a little bit because you might not remember what a concept map is, but it's basically those bubbles where the bigger bubbles represent more important ideas, and then it shows the connectedness between ideas. So that would be actually kind of a cool thing if you're a visual nonverbal learner, or if you're a tactile kinesthetic learner. You may actually really like concept map for this final study, because it really is just linking concepts together, which is kind of cool. All right, then we got the 3-column study sheets, which makes math, I think, a little easier to study. I did not know about these when I was in school, and I swear to God that I wish I would have had 3-column study sheets when I was in math. But we'll go over that in just a second. And then Cornell study sheets, where you create like the Cornell system, where you put like names of important people, key terms and questions on one side of the paper, and then you put what that person did, the definition for key terms, and the answers to the questions on the other, and then a little summary on the end of each page. So we're going to go into each type of study material here. So first is the outline. This is just an example. I'm not going to spend too long on it because we've gone over outlining already, and because this is pretty easy to do if you know how to outline. If you don't know how to outline, I suggest you go back to our note-taking section because we did talk about it there. All right, creating test questions. You want to do all types of questions like true, false, short answer, fill-in, essay questions. Look at the chapter headings for clues about what types of questions your teachers might be asking, because your teachers are looking through the book to make test questions as well, and they're looking at the headings and going, oh yeah, that's important. Okay. Turn starred concepts into questions. So I would say you start with the ones that are circled and then go to the 3-star and then go to the 2-star questions and then do the last one, the 1-star. Make a key list of terms and turn them into questions. That's a good idea. And then work in study groups to create test questions. I think working in a study group, when you're working in a study group, that creating test questions together is probably one of the best ways to do group study. Okay, next we got flashcards, which I'm not going to spend too much time on, but on one side you put either a picture of the thing or the key term, and then on the other side you put the definition. You put the name of the famous person, and on the other side what they did. You put a question on one side and the answer on the other, that kind of stuff. And then you test yourself with them because you look at the front side and then you try to guess what's on the back side before looking at it to see if you got it right. Okay, here we got 3-column study sheets. This is actually for math, but what I like about it is you see here, here's the problem, and then you start writing the solution. So you do the step and you explain what you did in the step. Step 2, you explain what you did in step 2. Step 3, you explain what you did in step 3 and then the answer. And see, the explanation part ensures that you understand what you're doing with each step. And if you understand and you write this out for each practice problem, by the time you get to the test, you're going to understand every step that you're taking and you're going to understand why you're taking that step. It's going to help you get the correct answer because you know why you're doing this stuff. I kind of feel like we forget the steps because we don't understand why we're doing them in the first place. And a lot of times with math, especially for me, I never understood why am I doing this problem? Like what would I even use this equation for in real life? So those are the types of questions you should be asking when you're studying math because I think it will help a lot of you understand, especially if you're not a math person. If you're not a math person, you should just understand numbers and why they exist. Asking yourself, why am I doing this step? Why am I dividing by 2 on both sides? And there's this really cool place called Khan Academy, Khan, and then Academy and it's just they have a YouTube. They also have a website. They have free videos and also paid videos that help you with math. There's someone being really loud. Maybe you guys can't even hear it, but I hear it. I don't know who it is. I think there are people that work at my apartment building, but I'm going to try to just ignore them and move on. So Cornell study sheets. So we talked about this, but this is the Q column where you write the name of the person, the key term, and then the question. Over here, you write what the person did. You write the definition for the key term, and then you write the answer to the question over here. And so you definitely want to make sure when you're doing Cornell study sheets, just like with all of the rest of this, that you start by creating them for the most important concepts first. And when you create like either a Cornell study sheet or an outline study sheet or even a concept map study sheet, I don't have an example of a concept map one in here. I thought I did, but I don't. But that's the one with the bubbles. So you actually want to make sure that you create kind of like a study booklet out of them. So your first pages in the booklet should always start with those 3-star plus the circle items, so the most important concepts, and then work their way down to the less most important concept, the less most important concept, to the less most important concept. Okay? So by studying this way, you absolutely ensure that you will understand and have seen the most important concepts more often than you've seen the less important concepts. That means you'll know the more important concepts better. And that's what you want going into a test, because if you've deemed that these things are the most important concepts, it's probably because these are things that your teacher has covered more than anything else, or they're highlighted the most in your textbook, or your teacher has just straight up said, these are the most important concepts, okay? So don't just like arbitrarily decide what's most important. Try to go off of what your teacher tells you, what the book says, and maybe even confer with other students and do group study so you can kind of figure this out together. So I hope that was helpful because a lot of people don't understand how to organize their stuff for studying before a test. And a lot of people don't give themselves enough time. Of course, knowing that you have a test coming up is a requirement for knowing, when to start studying for the test. So right now, if you guys are taking like a 14-week class, you should be hitting midterms pretty soon here. So you need to get ready, right? Here in this 8-week class, it's already midterms. Those have come and gone, so it's time for you to start looking at finals. And we only got 4 weeks left, so that means you really have to start studying now for your final. Start getting everything together, and that's why this studying, organizing study materials. Um, PowerPoint is so important right now because you're really ready to gear up and get ready for the final. So if you haven't been studying your notes from the beginning, it's never too late to start. I mean, it's better to start now, 4 weeks before the final exam, than to try to do the studying the night before. All right, so that's it. That's all I've got, and I hope you have a fantastic and wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.